we can have a different concept of happiness. And we can institute that concept of happiness and make it a reality. Prabhupada says here, whatever arrangements he proposes, meaning Krishna, we should accept. This is always better, for this will make us happy. So when we look at the material situation, we just find a huge number of living entities who are trying to institute or trying to apply a different conception of what will truly make the living entity happy and satisfied. And that is the only reason why we suffer. In the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna gives the prescription. He explains what will make the living entity happy. Why? He says the happiness will come by devotional service because that is our natural state. Jivaras Rupoya Krishnera Nitya Das. It is very instructive, Nitya. This means the eternal, unbreakable nature of the soul is to be thus. Anything else is an artificial imposition of the mind, and therefore, because it's not in line with the real nature, we can't be satisfied. And it doesn't matter how many attempts we make, we just become bitter as the attempts fail. In the introduction to the Brahma Samhita, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says, the phenomenal attraction is always found to tempt the sentient beings to enjoy the variegated position as opposed to undifferentiated monism. He says people are so much apt to indulge in transitory speculation, even when they are to educate themselves about a situation that lies beyond their empiric area or experiencing jurisdiction. In other words, everyone speculates about God. That's the point. And he says the materialistic demeanor can never approach the supreme autocrat. In other words, as long as we're in material consciousness, we can't actually approach Krishna. There is no approach without purity. And purity means that we submit to the will of the all-powerful Supreme Personality of Godhead. And it is a practice. It is an endeavor. It's an endeavor that we constantly work at, and in so many ways sometimes we fail. But the special qualities that the devotees determine, and they never give up. They never actually stop. So therefore, whatever bewilderment we are experiencing, we are sure that at some particular point in time, the Lord's grace will descend, and we will achieve success again by His mercy. It's interesting how in the Bhagavatam, Krishna is explaining to Uddhava how to actually gain mystic powers, because this is talking about how Bull Brahma was mystified. I'll read you something about that and then we'll discuss a bit further. So this is 11th canto, Bhagavatam, chapter number 15. Okay, so I'll just read a few verses. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, my dear Uddhava, the mystic perfections of yoga are acquired by a yogi who has conquered his senses, steadied his mind, conquered the breathing process, and fixed his mind on me. 2. Sri Uddhava said, my dear Lord the Tutor, by what process can mystic perfection be achieved? And what is the nature of such perfection? How many mystic perfections are there? Please explain these things to me. Indeed, you are the bestower of all mystic perfections. 3. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, the masters of the yoga system have declared that there are 18 types of mystic perfection in meditation, of which 8 are primary, having their shelter in me, and 10 are secondary, appearing from the material mode of goodness. 4 and 5. Among the 8 primary mystic perfections, the 3 by which one transforms one's own body are anima, becoming smaller than the smallest, mahima, becoming greater than the greatest, and lagima, becoming lighter than the lightest. And then Krishna will go on to explain how through so many kinds of devotional service or activities of connecting with Krishna, that one gains all kinds of mystic perfections. Actually, mystic abilities are not a big deal. Right? That while the materialists are still trying to work out whether they believe in such things, those who are in touch with the philosophy of the Bhagavad know that they're not a big deal. But the fact is that whatever mystic power someone has, it will not make anyone happy. Practically speaking, it can actually do the reverse. We have trouble in this material world dealing with our own mind. Right? Could you imagine what it would be like to actually know what everyone else is thinking? Right? Imagine coming into this room You're trying to deal with your own mind, and then you hear an opera of everyone else's minds. Right? Oh no, it's him again. Giving class. When will he end? When are we going to have breakfast? So many things. It will actually be very difficult. There were some Prabhupada disciples who, before they were initiated, they had certain mystic siddhis. And it was interesting how the day that Prabhupada initiated them, when he performed the initiation, he removed their mystic abilities from them at that particular point, because he considered that it would not be favorable to their devotional service. And it's a very, very instructive point. We don't care for mystic abilities because that's, again, one of those misconceptions. But if I was able to understand what people were thinking, if I had some ability, some mystic ability, I would be happy. You wouldn't be happy. You wouldn't be happy. Practically, it can just amplify the suffering. Although, technically speaking, if you want to gain mystic powers, all you need to do is invoke the mode of goodness on a continual basis. If someone invokes the mode of goodness continually, it's easy to invoke mystic abilities. It's not a big deal. You see, all of these things are subordinate attainments. The real reason why Krishna is constantly pushing us, not just pushing us through the philosophy, but he's pushing us through the difficulties that we experience in devotional life. He's constantly pushing us to move higher. It's because we find that we're often bewildered. Right? Do you ever have that experience? You're performing some devotional activity, or you're in the association of devotees, something comes up, right? And you're becoming disturbed. Right? And what is Krishna trying to do? He's giving us an indication that there's a higher platform, right? Because if you're becoming disturbed the way you are, the only solution is to transcend. Lord Brahma will eventually transcend this. Transcendence means what? It means exactly what Prabhupada speaks about in this verse. He quotes Sarva Dharma Parichaja. He quotes it twice. Transcendence means surrender. So whenever the devotees find it difficult in their spiritual life, the only solution is to understand that this is Krishna showing me my position. I'm easily disturbed and bewildered. Therefore, the only thing I can do is raise my consciousness, is to come closer to Krishna. And the only means by which I can come closer to Krishna is that I have to surrender. Right? Practically every aspect of this material world has one message. Right? The material world is meant to bring the living entities to their knees. Right? Understand that. Right? That's why Prabhupada says here about the material scientists. They chant Krishna saying, what is God? We can do this and do that. But the more they chant Krishna, the more they are implicated in suffering. One of the devotees was giving a presentation to the American Medical Association. And he began the presentation by saying, it's a shame that while I'm standing here addressing you all, that you're all dying so fast. That was his introduction to the presentation. Then he started to mention how doctors and medics, they tend to have the shortest lifespan of professionals. They tend to be the people who are the most addicted to drugs, to alcohol, right? Because they become so stressed and so traumatized by the job that they do. But practically speaking, it's not just them. Right? In this material world, we have what's called the substitution effect. Anything that you see people doing above and beyond and opposed to devotional service is a substitution for their eternal relationship with Krishna. And even within Krishna consciousness, whenever we take shelter of, and to the extent that we take shelter of anything above and beyond pure devotional service, that is a substitute. We are trying to substitute or make some substitution for our surrender to Krishna. And to the extent that we substitute other things for Krishna, to that extent we're not happy. To that extent we're not satisfied. And to that extent we actually lack realization. So this is the nature of reality. And Krishna consciousness simply means to surrender to the way that things actually are. This is how it is. At some point in the billions of lifetimes that we have in this world, at some point we have to understand, okay, right? This is just the way, this is Krishna's law, right? This is how it works. And I have to surrender to that. And until I surrender, I cannot be happy. And I will continually be punished by this material world through so many situations. And we see that now, more and more. Adi Atmika, Adi Daivika, Adi Bautika. people are suffering so much. So much. Brahma hears reward is an interesting point in the Ayurvedic Shastras. That mental illness is caused by disobeying one's internal conscience. Right? In other words, mental illness comes as a result of disobeying the supersoul. The internal guidance as to what should be done. When people continually, in a very strong, defined way, disobey that, they actually become ill. And then even you can take it to the devotional platform. It's explained that the root cause of all offenses, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, api pramadaha, inattentive chanting. And sometimes by the inattentive chanting, even people become crazy, bewildered. We should bear in mind the position of Lord Brahma. Right? He is such an exalted personality. He is actually born of the Lord's own lotus navel. And it's interesting how I was just doing a little bit of research. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says that when Lord Brahma heard the flute, there's a certain realization he had. Right? And that flute, the sound of the flute is also considered to be the Karma Gayatri. Right? Or that Karma Gayatri is generated by the flute playing of the Lord. Right? So Lord Brahma hears that. And it's actually explained.